During the closing years of the 18th century, a time we now know as the beginning of the Romantic period, most British men and women were very much aware that they were living in a time of great upheaval. As they went about their daily routines, they discussed the events that were radically changing their world. They discussed politics, what would be the repercussions of the recent revolutions in France and America. They discussed business, what would be the benefits and the costs of the Industrial Revolution that was sweeping their country. But at the time, few British men and women realized that another revolution was taking place in their midst. One not of battle or technology, but of literature. At the end of the 18th century, William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and the other poets who would become known as the Romantics were wrestling with philosophical ideas. Indeed, their works were part of a revolution in literature and philosophy. The Romanticism of Wordsworth and Coleridge, and of their counterparts Shelley, Blake, Byron, and Keats, was not the same sentiment that the term romantic often implies today. Instead, the term romantic referred to an entire worldview, one that elevated imagination and intuition over logic and reason. Lyrical Ballads, a collection of poetry published by Wordsworth and Coleridge, was part of a worldwide movement in art, music, and literature that would have an effect just as lasting as the political upheavals of the time. Much English literature of the 18th century had been rooted in logic and approached from a practical viewpoint. But to the Romantics, logic was an inferior way of seeking truth. They saw imagination as the only way to higher knowledge. They also saw the beauty and organic rhythms of nature as the most important sources of knowledge.
Beauty is truth, truth, beauty. That is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know.
William Blake in particular saw reason as the enemy, both of the artist and of mankind itself. In some of his allegorical poems, he created the figure of Urizen, the embodiment of the philosophies of the Age of Reason. In Blake's view, this god of reason is a tyrant, the enemy of the imagination. The English Romantic poets rebelled not only against the literature of their time, but also against political and social ideas as well. Of the French Revolution, which many Romantic poets saw as the dawn of real democracy, Wordsworth wrote, "Bliss was it in that dawn to be alive, but to be young was very heaven." For several years, Samuel Taylor Coleridge tried to set up a utopian community in Pennsylvania. Percy Shelley was expelled from Oxford for writing a pamphlet called The Necessity of Atheism. And to varying degrees, these poets' rebellions carried over into their personal lives. During his life, Byron was as noted for his personal eccentricities as for his poetry. He was, in the words of a friend, mad, bad, and dangerous to know. The Romantic period in English literature was one of its most fruitful periods, and also one of its shortest. Several of the Romantic writers suffered young and tragic deaths. Byron died at the age of 36 in Greece, where he had gone to work with Greek rebels who were fighting against Turkish rule. Shelley drowned in a boating accident off the coast of Italy when he was only 30. Perhaps most tragically of all, Keats died when he was just 25 years old. He asked that his epitaph read, "Here lies one whose name was writ in water." William Wordsworth, the co-author of the earliest book of English Romantic poetry, lived the longest of the writers. He died at the age of 80 in 1850. By then, the Romantic age was long over. Today, we continue to value the Romantics' ideas about imagination and the individual, but the innocence and exuberance of that age are forever gone.
Whither has fled the visionary gleam? Where is it now, the glory and the dream?